Ďakujem za prednášku. Teraz otváram diskusiu, dovolte mi povedať niekoľko organizačných informácií. Naša diskusia by mala trvať do 19:15, teda ak by sme veľký záujem a to bude to ešte efektívne, tak možno aj do 19:30 maximálne. Potom po diskusii by ste si pozvali na čašu vína, takže potom môžete využiť túto príležitosť. A zároveň, kto má záujem, môžete sa spýtať, prosím vás, pýtajte sa konkrétne, ak každý máte priestor 2 minúty, maximálne 2 minúty na svoju otázku. Povedzte, či chcete slovenčine alebo angličtine, mi sa páči, kto má záujem, mikrofón pokutujú vám, tak našim asistentom. Nech sa páči.
Dobrý večer, Legeň. Prosím vás, v poslednom čase sa tieto sedenia menia na také trošku zádušné omše za Európu. Tak sa chcem spýtať, že nášho nemeckého hostia, že kedy už Nemcom dôjde trpezlivosť a kedy už konečne povedia, že nebudú platiť tento neporiadok. Ďakujem.
At the next election. We have a group which is called Freie Wählergemeinschaften, free voter associations, which is very active at the provincial and local level. They have lots of seats, and many of them are mayors of their cities, and they have decided to run for the federal election next year. And the leading candidate, Hans-Olaf Henkel, is a former president of the German Confederation of Industry. So he's really very well known. And you can see him in talk shows very often, and he's a very good speaker. And on the other hand, I think that the Liberal Party, which is the main competitor, will fall out of parliament. Their percentages have been below 5% for quite some time. They have lost many provincial elections and dropped out of parliaments. And as it looks now, the German Liberal Party will be destroyed.
Ďalší má záujem, nech sa páči.
Chcel som sa spýtať, minule hovorila pani Merkelová, že je veľmi výhodné, aby Grécko ostalo v eurozóne a napriek tým obrovským peniazom, ktoré tam idú. Je to naozaj tak, čo si myslíte vy? Je to výhodné pre Nemecko, alebo nie je to výhodné?
It's certainly not beneficial for Greece. But I doubt that the next Greek government will want to leave the Eurozone, because it would be very unpopular in Greece. The opinion polls show that 80% of the Greeks do not want to leave the Eurozone. And that is easy to understand. If Greece leaves the Eurozone, returns to the drachma, and devalues the drachma, this would mean that the real value of Greek wages and monetary assets would be reduced. The Greeks don't want to have their wages and their assets, real value, reduced by fighting it. So I don't think we'll get that. In my view, the threat of a Greek exit was the main reason for the bailout funds. 2 years ago, when the bailout fund was decided, President Sarkozy said after the conference that he had saved the euro. And I wondered, what did he mean? If Greece had failed, would we not have the euro? He meant that the bailout funds were the means of preventing Greece from leaving the euro. Greece should be enabled to solve its problems with the help of the bailout funds without leaving the euro. And why did he not want Greece to leave the euro? Because if Greece leaves the euro, this is a very important precedent. And other countries may also want to leave the euro. And one country which might want to leave the euro is Germany. And France doesn't want Germany to leave the euro. This is the French acquis communautaire of the Maastricht Treaty. Paris made monetary union the condition for French assent to German unification. Mitterrand said he would not agree to German unification unless the D-Mark would go. There's a lot of evidence on that. I've written an article about it. There are quotations from Attali and Védrine and Telchik and so on. It's very clear. So the euro is a major achievement of French foreign policy because the D-Mark is gone. And Paris wants to avoid by all means that anybody leaves the euro.
Hello, my name is Martin Ruguli. I would like to ask in English. I would like to ask a question which is often cited, especially as a reason for the Central European countries to support European integration, and which is the negotiating power of these countries, which are often very small, and that they cannot compete in negotiation with China, Russia, or the US, and saying that the EU is the only viable at the moment alternative for them to have the negotiating power to have a fair balance against these powers. I want to ask you what you think of this, and whether you think that there should be an alternative sought, or this is not an issue for you at all. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. It's an important motive, and I call this Euro-chauvinism. And as a liberal conservative, it's not a legitimate argument in my view. The aim is to redistribute at the expense of third parties. I also think it's atavistic. It's the atavistic instinct of the horde that you have to gang up against others for your own security. But today we don't fight wars, and we're not in that situation. And really, if you increase your negotiating power, and if at the same time you increase the level of regulation and taxation at home, you really weaken yourself from within. I'm convinced that centralization is weakening Europe. It's not strengthening.
Ja by som troška... Ja by som trošku tak oponoval taký malý koment na to. Vy ste hovoril, že je eminentný záujem trošku Francúzska vlastne udržať eurozónu nejaké také niečo. Aby som, či nie je eminentný záujem Nemecka udržať euro a eurozónu, pretože pri rozpade eurozóny a pri návrate k marke nemeckej, nemecká ekonomika by utrpela pri silnej marke, pri smerom k exportu. Teda, že či aj toto nie je trošku pozadí nemeckých politikov udržať eurozónu za každú cenu. Lebo silná marka by oslabila export, a teda urobila by problémy ekonomické samému Nemecku.
Čo je váš pohľad na to? Teda, že to nie je problém Francúzska, len udržať eurozónu, ale v pozadí nemeckých ekonomov a politikov, aby to bol dobrý nástroj pre udržanie ekonomiky, teda rekonkurencie schopnosti. Váš pohľad na to. Je to môj pohľad, ja som laik do ekonomiky, ale jak mi to logika hovorí, že či to aj troška nie je tento smer. Prečo Nemci za každú cenu troška stoja za tým, aby sa udržala eurozóna. Aj keď im ďakujem za postoj politické a ekonomické smerom Európskej únie to také, ale či tam je to v pozadí udržanie celého eura.
Yes, that's also what Angela Merkel is saying, and what the banks are saying. We have had flexible exchange rates for a long time, until 1999. And German economy did very well, and it exported very well. The appreciation of the new D-mark would be accompanied by lower inflation. The problem is that the price level reacts with a lag of 2 years to monetary policy, whereas the exchange rate reacts immediately. So this question of competitiveness is purely temporary. It takes about 2 years. In the long run, relative prices between domestic and foreign goods are independent of the exchange rate regime. They are simply determined by the demand for the goods and the supply of the goods. They determine the relative prices of the goods. And the exchange rate is really a monetary veil, it's usually called. It's the veil of money. It doesn't affect the real world, except transitionally for 2 years, because the reaction lags are different.
Ďalší má záujem, nech sa páči, využite príležitosť.
Možno je moje meno. Mám na pána profesora dve otázky. Jedna otázka súvisí s tým, že by som rád poznal názor pána profesora ako futurológa. Jedná sa o to, že krajiny Európy majú vysokú úroveň sociálneho blahobytu, ktorý bol financovaný a je financovaný na dlh a vďaka veľkému prerozdeľovaniu. Európski politici na čele s Bruselom si myslia, že riešením je ďalšia centralizácia pre rozdeľovanie, ktoré vyrieši tento problém. Podľa môjho názoru je to cesta do slepej uličky a rád by som vedel názor na pána profesora, čo si myslí, čo nás čaká na konci tejto slepej uličky. To je jedna otázka. A druhá otázka. V posledných rokoch sme svedkami, že Európa, európski politici a bruselskí flagrantne porušujú všetky dohodnuté zmluvy a pravidlá a nič sa nedeje. Jak je to možné, že prečo na to verejnosť, tlač nereagujú adekvátne?
In principle, it would be possible to complain against the breaches of the treaty at the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg. But as I said, the judges of the European Court have a vested interest in increasing the power of the European institutions. The more powers the European institutions have, the Commission, the Parliament and so on, the more important and the more interesting are the cases which the judges at the European Court have to decide. In fact, this is an iron law of constitutional courts. There's a large literature on this. I've also worked on this. I've even done some econometric estimates. And it's absolutely clear that constitutional courts tend to be centralizers because they have a vested interest in centralization. In addition, the judges of the constitutional courts, like the judges of the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg, are usually appointed by central government. Take the Supreme Court in the United States, take the Bundesverfassungsgericht in Germany. So these judges are appointed or selected by the federal government, federal parliament. So you have selection of people who like centralization. So of course the UK could go to the court, but the complaint would be rejected. And the Brits have, I wouldn't say they have stopped complaining, they've just filed another complaint, but here they have learned the lesson. It doesn't work. You could forget about the European Court of Justice. The only thing that could be done is to change the treaties. So the Brits could say, we will not agree to the new budget, the financial framework for 2014 to 20, unless we have a change of the treaty, which says that the courts, the judges at the European Court of Justice must no longer be appointed in the way they are appointed. They should be selected by the constitutional courts of the member states. I'm suggesting that. The result would be completely different. The German constitutional court is very critical of centralization. It would get a completely different court. Your first question, yes. The European institutions would like to be active in redistribution. And that is why left-wing parties like centralization of policy at the European level, because this leads to redistribution. It would also lead to higher taxes. The problem for this policy of redistribution now is that the national governments are running out of money. In the past, they have financed the redistribution through debt, issuing debt. And they are now coming to the limit where this means of financing can no longer be used because they're losing their creditworthiness, many of them. And this means that the current crisis is really good in some ways. It means that this policy of redistribution by issuing debt cannot be continued. It also means that the Keynesian policy of fighting unemployment or recession by deficit spending can no longer be used. So we are in a very important situation now. It means that Keynesianism has come to its end in Southern Europe, unless Germany makes the mistake of financing such Keynesian policy.
Páči, ďalší má záujem. Víte, odpověď. Záujem.
Dobrý deň, Radovan Lacko, študent Ekonomickej univerzity v Bratislave. Chcel by som sa vás spýtať na váš názor. Ako sami dobre vieme, v Európskej únii postupne vo väčšine krajín ľudia skôr podporujú sociálno-demokratické strany v poslednej dobe, ako sme to mohli vidieť vo Francúzsku, ako to vidíme aj teraz u nás na Slovensku. Ja by som sa vás chcel spýtať na váš názor, aký to bude mať vplyv s ohľadom na ekonomickú situáciu a ďalší vývoj Európskej únie v tomto smere. Ďakujem pekne.
the change in France is very interesting. It's a disaster for France, but it may be good for Europe. The new French government, or the new French president, is against the so-called fiscal pact. For the German government, the fiscal pact is a precondition for the ESM, the new bailout fund. If France doesn't agree to the fiscal pact, Germany will not adopt the ESM. And this would mean that the bailout policy will stop on the 31st of June next year. Because the fund which we have now, the EFSF, will only run to the end of June next year. Moreover, the opposition in Germany, the Social Democrats, would have to agree to the fiscal pact because it involves a change in the German constitution, impose far-reaching conditions for their approval of the fiscal pact, including a financial transaction tax and various other things. And as long as the Social Democrats don't get the financial transaction tax, they will not agree to the fiscal pact. And as I said, if they don't agree to the fiscal pact, we will not get the ESM, and the bailout policy will be finished. In my view, the German Social Democrats have an interest in not agreeing to the fiscal pact, because they want to keep this issue going on, because it is terribly damaging to the Liberal Party. German Liberal Party got 14% of the vote at the last election, and they are now at 3 to 4%, which is not sufficient to get into parliament. In my interpretation, the main reason is that the voters of the Liberal Party are against the bailout policy. So the Social Democrats have a strong interest in keeping this bailout thing going on, because it will damage the Liberal Party and will throw them out of parliament. And if that happens, the CDU will have no other coalition partner than the Social Democrats. So the Social Democrats will come back to power in a grand coalition, or if they are lucky, in a coalition with the Greens. So the Social Democrats, both in Germany and in France, are likely to set an end to the bailout policy because they are against the fiscal pact.
Ja verím, že máte vypnuté telefóny a to slyšeme. Som, že nie je potrebné, teda ako budete pozorňovať, ale teda poprosím všetkých. A nech sa páči, využite možnosť, keď tu pán profesor ešte je a spýtajte sa, čo vás napadne, nech sa páči.
Moje meno je Hrebík a ja mám len takú poznámku k tým tabulkám, kde ste hovorili, pán profesor, o tej inklinácii nových štátov Európskej únie k Európskej únie, alebo identifikácii, vyššej identifikácii obyvateľov nových členských štátov proti starým členským štátom. Tie dôvody ste tam uvádzali rôzne, ale jedno, čo mi tam chýbalo, čo chcem v podstate upozorniť týmto, že keby sme sa pozreli na mieru korupcie, bývalé členské štáty a staré členské štáty a nové členské štáty, je tam podľa mňa obrovský rozdiel. Z toho sa dá celku jednoducho vysvetliť aj, prečo obyvateľia Novej Európy viacej dôverujú Bruselu ako obyvateľa starej Európy. A samozrejme, že tým pádom to všetko vyzerá, že východoeurópania viacej chcú byť európsky ako západoeurópania. Čiže tam v tých štatistikách tento argument je podľa mňa mimoriadne kľúčový. V tom sa líši východná Európa alebo teda nové členské štáty od starých členských štátov alebo sever od juhu. Takže to.
Yes, let me read out to you the countries where the public has more confidence in the European institutions than in the national government. And I start with those where the difference is the largest. That's Romania. The Romanians have 13% of the Romanians have confidence in their government, and 62% of Romanians have confidence in EU institutions. That's the largest difference we have. And now move through the list of countries. And we can ask ourselves, are these countries where corruption is a big problem? So after Romania, we have Lithuania. I don't think corruption is such a problem in Lithuania. Then Bulgaria. Probably, yes. Slovenia, I don't know. Then we have Slovakia, Czech Republic, Latvia, Poland, Croatia, Portugal, Belgium, Hungary, Italy, Spain, Greece, Malta. And then comes Estonia, France, and so on. So, apparently, if corruption is the explanation, corruption is not limited to Eastern Europe. You also have to look at Portugal, Italy, Spain, Greece, Malta.
Ja by som sa pána profesora rád spýtal nejaký typ ako nástroj ekonomický, nepolitický na verejnoprávny sektor v Európe, pretože malé európske krajiny nemajú takú výkonnosť ako veľké ekonomiky výkonné, napríklad ako Spojené štáty americké, Anglicko, Nemecko, Francúzsko a tak ďalej. Prejavuje sa to hlavne v mediálnom priemysle, napríklad v komunikáciách a všeobecne ako verejnoprávna služba. Či existuje podľa pána profesora nejaký nástroj, nejaký mechanizmus, ktorým sa tento veľký ako rozdiel, ktorý sa ešte zväčšuje, ako mohol zmenšiť?
No, I don't have a secret weapon. Except liberalization of markets. I think with regard to the policy of Eastern European states vis-à-vis the European Union, it might be helpful to have an organization of Eastern European states with liberal conservative governments concerning the European Union. I think the liberal conservative Eastern European politicians should collaborate more with each other, the different countries, so that the politicians of a single country are not so easily intimidated. They should improve their bargaining power by collaborating.
Dôležité, že sa páči. Tam na ruky, ktoré som videl, má niekto iný záujem. Ak nie, tak nech sa páči.
Chcel som spýtať, tak keď pre Nemecko je nevýhodné tam byť v tej eurozóne, tak prečo tam je, prečo teda nemeckí politici to na silu tam udržujú a či je technicky aj politicky možné, aby Nemecko vystúpilo a či je na tom nemecká politická vôľa, teda čo si myslia občania.
Well, the opinion polls show that 2/3 of the Germans say it was a mistake to get into the euro, and a narrow majority says we should get out of the euro. That's what the citizens say. The industrialists are mostly in favor of the euro, but they are really controlled by the banks. If you are a manager in a German company, member of the board, you have a banker in your supervisory board. And if you say something which is not in the interest of the banks, you have problems. First with your supervisory board. Moreover, you need credits from banks. You cannot say something which all the banks dislike. So be careful with your house bank. And no German manager can afford to say something which all the banks dislike. Unless you are close to retirement and you don't want to have a new contract anyhow. There are some very courageous German industrialists, Spätmann of Thyssen, maybe 5 people who openly say stop the bailout. And of course Henkel, but Henkel is retired. So the managers who are still active and want a new contract, they will not complain about the bailout and they will not complain about the euro. And that's the problem of the Liberal Party in Germany. The Liberal Party in Germany gets most of its money from the banks and from industry. That's why they follow this policy, which is suicidal. The Liberal Party in Germany needs not only money, but they also need voters. And they will lose their voters if they continue to do what the banks want.
Ja by som mal len takú malú poznámku k tej interpretácii tých rôznych sociologických výskumov. Treba si ešte uvedomiť, že vlastne dochádza k určitej projekcii určitých inštitúcií na celú Európu. Čiže napríklad na Slovensku je typické, že keď sa nedomôžete pravdy na našich súdoch, tak idete na Európsky súd pre ľudské práva a obvykle vám dá ako pravdu, a to je široko publikované. Čiže v podstate vlastne tieto, by som to povedal, pozitívne zážitky sa prenášajú aj na tie európske inštitúcie. A ďalšia vec je to, že väčšina ľudí nemá skúsenosti, priamu skúsenosť s európskou inštitúciou. Ako málo kto z tých, ktorí sa pýtali, zažil, čo to je nejaká porada v Európskej únii alebo podobne. Čiže v podstate ide o toto. Čiže to, čo nepoznám, ako tak si môžem, by som to povedal, ako glorifikovať a podobne. No a ďalšia vec, že vlastne s tými našimi máme ako priamu skúsenosť, no a v poslednom čase už niekedy si človek myslí, že skôr akože politické aktivity to je skôr diagnóza ako zamestnanie, takže viete, ono je to o tom. Ale chcel by som, keďže ste profesor ekonomie, položiť takú otázku, že chcel by som aj takú priamu odpoveď, ako, že dokedy to ešte môže takto vydržať. Ako vlastne s takýmito, by som to povedal, umelými konštrukciami a všetko je to o nejakých účtovných uzávierkách a o ďalšom akože šibovaní, by som to povedal, virtuálnych peňazí ako a miliardy a tak ďalej. Koľko to ešte takto môže vydržať? A čo sú také, by som povedal, udalosti, ktoré vlastne ukončia tento proces podľa vás?
Yeah, the only chance is that the treaty is changed. Because in legislation, the Commission has the monopoly of initiative. The European Parliament is probably the only parliament in the world which does not have the right of legislative initiative. A new law can only be proposed by the Commission. And the Commission will never propose a law which is against its own interests. All the laws which the Commission proposes are centralized. So we have a one-way street. And one of the first things would be to change the treaty and to give the right of legislative initiative to the Parliament and to the Council of Ministers. And the only way of getting this change in the treaty is the negotiation about the multi-annual financial framework. Because there, even a minority of states, in fact, even the UK alone, could make sure that the treaty is changed. That's the only way. The Court of Human Rights is not a European Union institution. It has based on the Council of Europe, and the Council of Europe has about 50 member states. So it has nothing to do with the European Union.
Kto ma záujem ešte spýtať?
Večer som sa pána profesora Oliva Stýkala rád teda mám také nadväzujúce otázky, aj keď táto kríza ekonomická, hospodárska aj etická, tak zasahuje veľa krajín. Zdá sa, že niektoré, ktoré si ponechali vlastnú menu, ako krajiny Škandinávie alebo Veľká Británia, prípadne susediace Česko, že ich to zasiahlo menej, keď to tak poviem. Že aký je jeho názor na tom, či to je v tej mene, alebo teda prípadne aj niečom inom. A ešte potom taká nadväzujúca otázka, že ktorú zmenu videl ako nemecký ekonóm dramatickejšie ako zmenu, keď sa spájalo Nemecko, keď východná marka Nemecka vlastne sa nejakým spôsobom vyhodnotila, alebo keď sa menilo z marky na euro. Podľa mňa teda. Ďakujem.
I think in terms of financial magnitudes, Eastern Germany has been more costly to Western Germany than the bailout of Greece, Portugal, Ireland, and now Spain. Western Germany has paid 220 billion D-marks each year. So this would be 110 euros each year to Eastern Germany so far. And that's continuing. And the money that has been paid out under the bailout so far is about 200 billion euros. So it's much less. And the fund, no, that's not even true. Yeah, that's the amount which has been paid out. The fund is 500 billion. I'm not absolutely sure. Don't pin me down. But anyhow, it's absolutely clear that Eastern Germany has been more expensive for Western Germany than the bailouts. Now your other question. Yes, there are several econometric studies which show that the Euro countries have fared worse during the financial market crisis of 2008 and 2009 than the non-Euro countries of the European Union. That's true for the UK, even though it has a very large financial sector. Poland, Hungary, and so on. And the reason is that these currencies have devalued much more than the euro in the financial crisis. Poland had a very large devaluation, Hungary also. So, if you are not a member of the euro, you are free to choose the exchange rate policy which you prefer in such a crisis, and it was definitely an advantage not to be in the euro. Moreover, these studies show that countries which had a flexible exchange rate and no monetary rule fared worse than countries which had a flexible exchange rate and a monetary rule. So it also depended on whether you had some predictability for monetary policy. Because if you have a flexible exchange rate and no rule for monetary policy, then the market has no idea whatsoever what the central bank will do. It's better to have a fixed exchange rate than to have no commitment whatsoever. But it is better to have a monetary rule than a fixed exchange rate.
Ak má niekto otázku, tak ešte neváha, využije poslednú možnosť. Ak nie, tak budem pomaly skončiť naše stretnutie dnešné. Chcel by som vám poďakovať za vašu účasť, ešte raz vás pozvať na čašu vína a veľmi chcem poďakovať pánovi profesorovi za jeho prednášku a za odpovede na vaše otázky. Ďakujem.